Greetings to all of you, my dear sisters and brothers, and my dear friends, and all of you are welcome to our new study of committed study of Ruth and Esther, doing God's will, whatever the cost. And we are now in chapter 3 of the Book of Esther. And we start anew on Haman, his subtlety, and you find it in the chapter 3, the verses 7 to 15. And let's read it together, okay? Well, this is your Pastor Yeti. I thought I said my name, but anyway. Okay, chapter 3 of the Book of Esther. And 7 to 15. In the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the first month, the month of Nisan, the poor, that is the lot, was cast in the presence of Haman to select a day and month, and month. And the lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, "There is a certain people dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separated. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give them 1,000 talents of silver to the king's administrations for the royal treasury." So the king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. "Keep the money," the king said to Haman, "and do with the people as you please." Then on the 13th day of the first month, the royal secretaries were summoned. They wrote out in the script of each province and in the language of each people all Haman's orders to king's satraps, to the governor of the various provinces, and the nobles of the various peoples. These were written in the name of King Xerxes himself and sealed with his own ring. Dispatched were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day. The 13th day of the month, 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as a law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so they would be ready for that day. The couriers went out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered. Follow the steps that wicked Haman took as is executed his plan to destroy the Jewish people. He selected the day. You find it in verse 7. Haman and some of the court astrologers cast lots to determine the day for the Jews' destruction. This was done privately before Haman approached the king with this plan. Haman wanted to be sure that his gods were with him and that his plan would succeed. The eastern peoples in that day took few important steps without consulting the stars and the omens. A century before, when King Nebuchadnezzar and his generals couldn't agree on a campaign strategy, they paused to consult their kings. Or the king of Babylon stand at the parting of the road, at the fork of the two roads, to use divination. He shakes the arrows, he consults the images, he looks at the liver. The Babylonians' word puru means lot, and from it Jews get the name of their feast, Purim. It's interesting that Haman began this procedure in the month of Nisan, the very month in which the Jews celebrated their deliverance from Egypt. As the astrologers cast lots over the calendar, month by month and day by day, they arrived at the most propitious date, the 13th day of the 12th month. This decision was certainly of the Lord, because it gave the Jews a whole year to get ready, and because it would be also given Mordecai and Esther time to act. The lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord. Was Haman disappointed with this choice? He may have wanted to act immediately, catch the Jews off guard, and satisfy his hatred much sooner. On the other hand, he would have nearly a year in which to nurse his grudge and anticipate revenge, and that would be enjoyable. He could watch the Jews panic, knowing that he was in control, even if the Jews took advantage of this delay and moved out of the empire. He would still get rid of them and be able to claim whatever goods and property they would have left behind. The plan seemed a good one. He requested the king's permission. Like Satan, the great enemy of the Jews, Haman was both a murderer and a liar. To begin with, he didn't even give the king the name of the people who were supposed to be subverting the kingdom. Its vague description of the situation made the danger seem even worse. The fact that these dangerous people were scattered throughout the whole empire made it even more necessary that the king do something about them. Haman was correct when he described the Jews as a people whose laws are different from those of all other people. Their laws were different because they were God's chosen people, who alone received God's holy law from his own hand. And Moses asked, "And what great nation is there that has such status and righteous judgments as are in all this law, which I set before you this day?" And the answer is, none. The fact that one man, Mordecai, disobeyed one law was exaggerated by Haman into the false accusation that all the Jews disobeyed all the laws of the land. The prophet Jeremiah had instructed the Jews of the exile to behave as good citizens and cooperated with their captors. And the evidence seems to be that they obeyed. If the Jews in the Persian Empire had been repeatedly guilty of sedition or treason, Xerxes would have known about it by now. And even if some Jews in a few towns did disobey the king's law, why should the whole nation of Israel be destroyed for the crimes of a few? Haman's coup de grace came at the end of his speech, when he offered to pay the king 10,000 talents of silver for the privilege of ridding the empire of danger of these dangerous people. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, the annual income of the entire Persian Empire was 50,000 talents of silver. In effect, Haman was offering the king an amount equivalent to 2/3 of that huge amount. Haman must have been a fabulously wealthy man. Of course, he hoped to recoup some of this amount from the spoil taken from the Jews. In Esther 3 verse 11, the king's response, "The silver is given to thee," gives the impression that Xerxes rejected the money and offered to pay the expenses himself. In typical Orient fashion, the king politically rejected the offer, "Keep the money," fully expecting Haman to insist that he accept it. See Abraham's bargaining with the sons of Heth. Haman knew that the Greek wars had impoverished the king's treasuries, and he would never have offered so much money to so mighty a ruler if he didn't really intended to pay it. Without asking any question, the king gave Haman his royal signet ring, which granted him the authority to act in the king's name. He could write any document he pleased and put the king's seal on it, and the document had to be accepted as law and obeyed. It was a foolish thing for Xerxes to do, but true to character, he acted first and regretted it afterwards. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him. Now come a step further. He immediately spread the word. Unknown to the Jews who were getting ready to celebrate Passover, Haman was busy with the king's secretaries, written out the new law and translating it into the various languages of the peoples within the empire. In verse 13, the words of the law are similar to the instructions Samuel gave to King Saul when he sent him to destroy the Amalekites. The one important difference was that Saul was not permitted to take any of the spoil, while Haman and his helpers hoped to plunder the Jews and accumulate great wealth. The official document was given to the royal couriers, who quickly carried it to every part of the empire. If, in an ancient kingdom, a message of bad news could be so quickly prepared, translated, and distributed, why does it take the church so long to disseminate the good news of salvation through faith in Jesus Christ? To be sure, we have more people in our modern world than Xerxes had in his empire, but we also have better means of communication and transportation. The problem must be with the couriers. The message is ready to go, but we don't have enough people to carry it out, enough money to send them. The work was done quickly before Haman didn't want Xerxes to change his mind. Once the law was written and sealed, the doom of the Jews was also sealed, for the laws of the Medes and Persians could not be altered. Haman's subtle plan had worked. Is apathy or apathy. Haman could send out the death warrants for 1,000 of innocent people and then sit down to a banquet with the king. What a calcid heart he had. I think the word is calloused heart he had. He was like the people the prophet Amos described, that drink wine in bowls and anoint themselves with the chief anointments, but they are not grieved for the affection of Joseph. However, in the end, it was his own death warrant that Haman had sealed, for within less than 3 months, Haman would be a dead man. Science may have found a cure for most evils, but it has found no remedy for the worst of them all, the apathy of human beings. Jesus vividly illustrated that apathy in the parable of the Good Samaritan. He pointed out that 2 religious men, a priest and a Levite, ignored the needs of the dying man, while the Samaritan, a hated outsider, sacrificed to take care of him. And Jesus also made it clear that loving the Lord ought to make us love our neighbors, and that our neighbors is anyone who needs us. So therefore, before we condemn wicked Haman, let's examine our own hearts. Billions of lost sinners in this today's world are under a sentence of eternal death, and most Christians do very little about it. We can sit at our church banquets on Sunday dinners without even thinking about helping to get the message out that the Father has sent to the Son to be the Savior of the world. In contrast to the happiness of the king and his prime ministers were the heaviness and the bewilderment of the people in Susha, Gentiles and Jews alike. What had caused this sudden change in policy? Why were the Jews suddenly targeted as enemies of the empire? Was there any way of escape? The situation was not hopeless, however, for God had two people prepared and in place, Mordecai and Queen Esther, and he was ready to act. But that is for tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about a day of decision of chapter 4 of the Book of Esther. I hope you enjoy this historical background of the Persians and find ourselves spiritual in this story, how we live our lives as Christians and how we deal with when evil comes to us, when people are attacking us. Let's open our hearts and minds and study the scriptures more and more so that we allow the Holy Spirit to transform us to become more like Christ. Blessings to all, my dear ones. Blessings to all of you. This is your Pastor Yeti. Bye.